3 days before my wedding, I was publicly accused of cheating with a woman I'd never met, using a Tinder profile I didn't create, and a photo taken so far out of context it might as well have been a crime scene. By the time I opened the message, it had already detonated, in front of my fiancée, her family, my family, and half our guest list. The first thing I saw was a blurry screenshot. The second was Paige's reply, "Don't bother explaining. We're done." The message came in during a Monday morning meeting. I remember staring at my phone while my team lead droned on about deadlines, unaware that the entire trajectory of my life had just been blown to hell. I tapped the notification and saw it was a group text from Melissa, Paige's maid of honor. Paige was in it. So were my parents. Her parents. Her sister. The wedding planner. Even my cousin Matt, who hadn't texted me in a year, was somehow on this chain. The message read: "I hate to do this, but someone has to. Paige deserves better." Screenshots attached. There were 3. The first was a Tinder profile with my face on it. Not just a random photo either, it was one from my old LinkedIn, years ago, when I still wore ties to client calls. The second was a text thread between me and a woman named Ariel, filled with flirtation and references to our weekend together. The third was a zoomed-in image of me sitting at a bar, leaning across a table toward a brunette. From the angle, it looked intimate. I froze. The Tinder profile was fake. The messages were fake. The bar photo was real, but wildly misleading. I was at a networking mixer 2 weeks earlier. The woman across from me? A junior associate at my firm I'd been assigned to mentor. There were 5 other people at the table. You wouldn't know it from the photo. Before I could even react, Paige responded. "Don't bother explaining. We're done." Just that. 5 words. No punctuation. No hesitation. Then the screen lit up with reactions, sad faces, thumbs down, disgusted emojis. Like I was a post on Reddit getting downvoted into oblivion. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Paige, I don't know what this is, but none of it's true." Then another, "Please, can we talk?" Then one more, "You know me." Nothing. I stared at the screen for maybe 10 minutes before realizing I was still in a meeting. Someone was saying my name. "Hey, you good?" I fumbled out an excuse and logged off, then stood in the middle of my condo, not knowing what the hell to do next. By noon, I was blocked. Phone. Socials. Email. Even my Spotify had unfollowed our shared playlists. I drove to her apartment that evening, heart hammering, still thinking this was some kind of twisted misunderstanding. Her sister answered the door. She looked at me like I'd just pissed on her shoes. "You need to leave," she said flatly. "I just need 5 minutes," I told her. "I need to talk to Paige." "She doesn't want to talk to you," she snapped, and then added, "Jesus, Ben, how long were you seeing that girl behind her back?" I wasn't, I started, but the door shut before I could finish. I went home. Sat on the edge of the bed. Looked at the photo again. At first, I was just trying to figure out who had taken it. Then I noticed the lighting, same clothes, same spot, but the image had been cropped so tight, you couldn't tell it was a table for 6. The rest of the context had been cut away like fat from meat. The fake Tinder profile had the same old profile pic I'd used on LinkedIn back when I still wore blazers. That photo had only been public again for a few days. I'd reactivated the account to help a colleague with networking. I knew, even then, someone had gone looking for it. I didn't sleep that night. I left a voicemail around 2 a.m. Tried to sound calm. I told her the profile wasn't mine, that the photo was from a company event, that I loved her. I got halfway through a sentence before my voice cracked. I hung up. The next morning, my parents called. My mom asked me flat out if I'd cheated. I told her no. She said, okay, but it didn't sound like she believed me. That afternoon, Paige's mother emailed me an itemized list of my share of the cancellation fees. The venue. Catering. Florist. It came to just over $2,300. There wasn't a single line of text. Just the invoice. I paid it immediately. Then I disappeared. For 3 straight days, I stayed inside. Didn't answer texts. Didn't return calls. I took down the wedding timeline from the fridge and shoved it in a drawer. I boxed up the groomsmen gifts I hadn't handed out yet. The tux rental hung untouched in my closet. Our honeymoon itinerary sat in a folder on the kitchen counter: Rome, Florence, Capri. First class. Non-refundable. On the 4th day, Carl called. "You alive?" he asked. "Barely. I'm coming over." He showed up with gas station coffee and silence. We sat on my balcony in hoodies, watching the sun drop behind the skyline like it was any other Thursday. "You want to talk about it?" he asked eventually. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "She believes I cheated. Everyone does." Carl sipped his coffee and nodded. "Yeah. But I don't." That made me pause. "Something about this feels off," he said. "Too clean. Too fast." Everyone saw the screenshots at the same time. No warning. Paige didn't even ask you. She just dumped the nuke and walked away. I shook my head. She's emotional. She probably just. "No, man," Carl cut in. "She's not stupid. She's calculated. That's one of the things you liked about her. She plans shit. She controls narratives. You think she wouldn't at least ask you if she thought it was real?" I looked at him, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a cold, dull weight start to shift behind the confusion. Carl saw it too. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe this wasn't about finding out. Maybe it was about making sure everyone else did." We sat there a long time. Then Carl said, "By the way, that name from the screenshots, Ariel, wasn't she at that wine tasting last month? The one Melissa dragged us to?" I didn't answer. I was already replaying the night in my head. Carl leaned back, exhaled, and said, "Man, if this was a hit job, it was a damn good one." A week after Paige called off the wedding, someone from the venue left me a voicemail. I almost didn't check it. I'd been ignoring everything outside my building, barely responding to texts, and letting emails pile up unread. But that afternoon, I listened. The woman's voice was cheerful, too cheerful. She said she just wanted to confirm that the new date Paige had submitted for the rebooking matched the one we discussed before, and to ask if I'd still be attending the walkthrough as secondary contact. There was a pause at the end, like she realized she probably shouldn't have left that last part on a voicemail, and then a quick, "Let us know if you have any questions." Then a click. I sat on the couch for 10 minutes just holding my phone. I hadn't spoken to Paige in 9 days. Blocked on everything. She hadn't even let me explain. But here she was, already rebooking the same venue, as if nothing had happened. Not canceling. Not grieving. Just swapping out the groom like it was a spreadsheet error. And they were asking if I'd still be attending. That was the first crack. Not in my composure, I'd already lost that, but in the version of events I'd been trying to believe. The one where this was a mistake. A misunderstanding. Something that just spiraled too fast. After that voicemail, it was harder to pretend I didn't know exactly what was happening. I still didn't lash out. I didn't confront anyone. But I opened a new folder on my laptop and started pulling together everything I had. The original group text. Screenshots of the fake Tinder profile. The LinkedIn image it had clearly been pulled from. I exported it all into PDFs, saved them to a folder titled miscellaneous_receipts. I told myself it was for peace of mind. For closure. I didn't label it revenge. I wasn't ready to say that out loud. A few days later, a package arrived. It was a wedding gift, a retro-style cocktail set, engraved with Ben and Paige, EST 2025. The note said, "So excited to celebrate your love. You two are perfect together. No return address." I held the box in both hands for a long time, trying to decide if I felt anything. I didn't. Not sadness. Not nostalgia. I just put the gift on a shelf, still wrapped, and added a photo of it to the miscellaneous_receipts folder. Carl came by that weekend. He didn't ask questions. Just brought 2 six-packs and takeout. We ate on the balcony again, overlooking the quiet street below. At one point, I told him about the voicemail from the venue. "She rebooked it?" he asked. 3 days after the blow-up, I said. Didn't even change the location. He raised his eyebrows and shook his head. Damn. I looked at him. You still think it was a setup? I think someone went out of their way to burn you publicly, he said. That kind of hit doesn't happen on accident. And Paige? She's smart. She doesn't move that fast unless she's already made her next move. The next morning, I reactivated an old Proton Mail account I used to use for freelance projects. I didn't tell anyone. Just set it up on a separate browser, logged out of everything else. Again, I told myself it wasn't for anything specific. Just to have options. About a week after that, I was drinking coffee, scrolling through job listings, when I got the LinkedIn notification. Melissa viewed your profile. It stopped me cold. I hadn't seen her name since the group text explosion. She'd been the one who sent the screenshots. The self-appointed truth-teller. The one who hated to do it, but did it anyway. And now, quietly, she was watching. I clicked on her profile. It was locked down, private photo, limited work history, no posts. Just her name, her title, and the fact that she'd looked at me. I stared at the screen, letting the coffee go cold in my hands. I hadn't added anything to my profile in over a year. The only recent change was reactivating it. So why now? I told myself it didn't mean anything. People click around all the time. But then I remembered Carl's comment about Ariel. How she'd been at the wine tasting a couple months back. I remembered her face now, and more importantly, I remembered who she'd arrived with. Melissa. I sat there for a long time, thinking back on that night. I'd barely spoken to Ariel. She'd complimented my jacket in passing, the same one from the bar photo. Melissa had poured wine for her, steered conversations, introduced people. I hadn't noticed any of it at the time. But now it all felt staged. Or at least, arranged. I didn't tell Carl about the Proton Mail account. I didn't mention that I'd started saving every piece of correspondence in that folder. I didn't say a word about the burner phone I picked up at a gas station later that week, cash only, just in case. All I told him was that I was sleeping a little better, eating a little more, getting back into routine. That wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the full truth either. I kept saying I didn't want revenge. I said it so many times, it started to sound like a prayer. But sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, open my laptop, and just stare at the files I'd gathered. The screenshots. The voicemail transcript. The list of mutual friends who dropped off without a word. I told myself I just wanted peace. But I started waking up earlier. And I started remembering things. 2.5 weeks after the wedding was supposed to happen, I got a text from Jonah, Paige's old coworker and one of the guys we'd invited to the rehearsal dinner. We weren't especially close, so the message caught me off guard. It said, "Hope you're doing okay. You didn't deserve that." I stared at it for a full minute before responding with something non-committal, "Appreciate it. Thanks." A minute later, He followed up with, "There's more people than you think who figured it out. Not everyone bought their version." That was the first time I realized the narrative might actually be slipping. A few days later, the tux rental place called. The guy was polite, trying to keep his tone casual, but he sounded unsure. "Hey, just following up on the reschedule for the groom's party," he said. "I see the name on the account changed, but it still shows your email listed as the backup contact. Did you want to be removed?" I told him yes and hung up. But I didn't delete the voicemail. I moved it into a different folder this time. One I just created called Rehearsal. That night, I signed up for a year-long subscription to a background check service. It wasn't for anyone specific, not yet. I just wanted the option. That's what I told myself. I didn't post. I didn't reply. I didn't correct anyone's assumptions. But I stopped pretending I was waiting for things to blow over. I wasn't chasing karma. I was mapping pressure points. Then Carl came over again. He'd heard about the tux call. I told him what they said, and he just shook his head slowly. "She really kept everything the same?" he asked. "Yeah. Same venue. Same color scheme. Same vendors. Just a different guy." Carl leaned back in his chair. "So she doesn't care how it looks?" "No," I said. "She wants it to look normal. Seamless. Like I was the mistake, and now she's getting it right." Carl didn't say anything for a moment. Then he looked up and said, "Melissa set the whole thing up." I didn't pause this time. "Yeah. And Paige let her?" He nodded. "Not just let her. She let her do it publicly. That's different." I said nothing. That part had already been sitting with me. Paige hadn't just let Melissa drop those screenshots in a group text with our parents, our planner, our friends. She'd let her do it without warning me, without asking questions, and she'd blocked me the same hour. That wasn't a mistake. That was coordination. Carl pulled out his phone and opened Instagram. "You seen this?" he asked. I hadn't. It was Ariel's account, private now, but someone had screen capped a story before she locked it. It was a black background with white text, "When you realize you were just used to get back at someone else. Never again." I read it 3 times. "Think she's talking about you?" Carl asked. "She's not talking about me," I said. "She's talking about Melissa." Carl leaned forward. So Ariel was in on it, but didn't know the full picture. "She probably thought she was just flirting with someone who was already on the rocks," I said. "Melissa likely told her I was shady, told her to chat me up, maybe snapped the photo herself at the bar. Ariel probably didn't know the whole setup was fake. Just enough to make it look real." Carl nodded slowly, like the final piece had just clicked. "So Paige gets to feel like the victim. Melissa gets to play hero. And Ariel gets stuck in the crossfire." Exactly. The next day, I logged into the dummy account I'd used to watch the wedding group Paige used to frequent. It had been quiet for a while, but I found a new post from someone asking about spring weddings at our venue. The top comment was under a different name, but I recognized the writing style immediately. Same voice, same punctuation quirks, same emojis Paige used in every one of her old captions. She recommended our vendor list and wrote, "Sometimes the first choice isn't the right one, and that's okay. The second try can be even better." I took a screenshot and stared at it. It wasn't just callous, it was confident. She wasn't hiding what she'd done. She thought she'd buried it deep enough that no one would trace it back. That night, I didn't just save the screenshot. I made a new folder and called it Second Try. I moved the group text there. The tux voicemail. The post. Melissa's profile ping. Ariel's screenshot. Even Jonah's cryptic message. I wasn't hoarding evidence anymore. I was sorting it. Building lanes. Starting to test for structural weakness. A few days later, a florist assistant called me by mistake. She was confirming details for Paige's new event but still had my number saved. I asked her, casually, how things were going. She hesitated, then said, "I don't know, it's been a little tense." She's been different since the whole thing with the last guy. Not as warm. I thanked her, hung up, and typed the conversation into a document titled Vendor Notes. I hadn't sent a single email. Hadn't made a single accusation. But the walls were already starting to bend. Paige had built her version of the story with the assumption that I would fold quietly, disappear, and leave her the stage. She never expected that I'd stay behind the curtain, watching. Taking notes. Waiting for the right moment to let the light back in. And the more I watched, the clearer it became. Precision like that only lasts if no one's looking directly at it. All I had to do was make sure people started looking. 3 weeks before the wedding would have happened, I got an email from the restaurant we'd booked for the rehearsal dinner. It was a group message sent to the original guest list. Someone hadn't updated the recipient list yet. The subject line read, "Final rehearsal confirmation, Friday, 6:30 p.m. It included Paige's name. Same venue, same date, even the same RSVP contact, Melissa. My cousin forwarded it to me, confused, asking, "Wait, is this a thing again? With her?" I didn't respond to him, but I called the restaurant directly, told them I wasn't attending, and asked to be removed from all future correspondence. The woman on the line sounded flustered and started apologizing, said she remembered the cancellation and was surprised it was back on so quickly. I said, "You remember the cancellation?" "We all did." "It was intense," she said. "We were told there was a cheating scandal. The bride came in, said it was over, and everything was done. But then she came back a week later with a new guest list. Same everything. Just, different tone." "What do you mean, different tone?" "Less emotional. More, processed. She was efficient. Cold, honestly. That stuck with me. Cold. Not hurt. Not embarrassed. Cold. That night I didn't just file the email away like the others. I printed it. Put it in an actual envelope. Wrote one sentence across the back in a Sharpie, "Congrats on the second try." I didn't sign it. Didn't put a return address. I mailed it to Paige's office. I wasn't planning revenge. Not officially. But I had started laying out the pieces like a blueprint. I went back into the archive and created a second folder. I didn't name this one, Leverage. I didn't give it a title at all. But it wasn't for documentation anymore. It was for pressure. It held the HR report on Melissa's old breach investigation. I had already pulled the name of the director who handled it. There was a slim chance he still worked at her former company. I flagged the entry. I wasn't sure I'd use it. But it was there. Melissa wasn't just a toxic bridesmaid or a jealous instigator. She was methodical. This wasn't the first time she'd stepped outside ethical lines to spin a story or protect her own people. That HR report was vague, but it had teeth. Internal leak. Data pulled from a personal device. Verbal warning, no termination, but the note was there. Someone once thought she was dangerous enough to write it down. She was still dangerous now. Hannah, Paige's former co-worker, sent another message. She said Melissa was still running her mouth at client mixers, implying she saved Paige's life by stepping in before she married someone with a secret double life. Hannah had recorded a short clip of one of the conversations, not with intent, but because she was taking notes on her phone while Melissa rambled near her. The audio was scratchy, but clear enough. You could hear Melissa say, "I knew something was off with Ben months ago. I just told her to check." And sure enough, boom. Caught red-handed. I saved the audio to the unnamed folder. I also forwarded it to a second email I'd set up the week after Paige blocked me. It was under a different name. Clean, untraceable, already connected to 3 vendor mailing lists and 1 private wedding forum. That same week, I saw the first real public crack. A floral company page tagged in a wedding inspiration post put up a story thanking Ben and Paige for using their services. It was up for less than an hour before they deleted it. I only knew because Carl screenshotted it and texted it to me with one line, "She forgot to scrub the past." I looked at the photo. It was one of our original table arrangements, white peonies and silver eucalyptus in tall glass vases. We'd designed it together. She was still using it. Still calling it her vision. Just replacing one side of the memory with another. It wasn't the only slip. 2 days later, a mutual friend tagged the wrong guy in a group photo from Paige's engagement dinner. The tag was supposed to link to the new fiancée, who still hadn't been named anywhere publicly, but instead it linked to me. It was corrected in under 5 minutes. But not before 3 people liked it and 1 person commented, "This didn't age well." I took a screenshot. That was when I went back into the wedding group on my burner account and left 1 comment under the thread about couples swapping grooms mid-planning. I didn't say anything dramatic. No accusations. No threats. I just typed, "Receipts exist." It got 12 likes in the first hour. Paige hadn't posted about the wedding again since that comment appeared. That was the first time I saw her mask shift. Her latest photo, just a sunset, no caption, had the comments turned off. She'd never disabled them before. Not even when the cheating rumors were flying around. Not when she was rebooked and moving on. Only now, after a quiet message and a few mistakes exposed the shape of what she'd built, did she start closing doors. I called Carl. Told him everything I'd collected. He didn't ask what I was going to do with it. He just said, "You picking your moment?" Almost. "You want me there when it happens?" "No," I said. "I need them all in the room." When I hung up, I opened the blank folder again. I didn't change the name. I just added one last thing, a list of everyone invited to the new rehearsal dinner. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. The rehearsal dinner was held at the same restaurant we'd booked together months before, same private room, same overhead string lights, even the same Spotify playlist humming softly through the speakers. She hadn't changed a thing, just swapped the name on the RSVP contact and hoped no one would notice the tracks were chosen by the guy she tried to erase. I didn't arrive as a guest. I came in early through the side entrance with the off-duty bartender I'd hired, the one who knew how to keep quiet and move unnoticed. While guests were still arriving, I waited in the back hallway, dressed in black, calm, unhurried, watching names cross the threshold that had once belonged to me. Paige moved from table to table, greeting people with the same rehearsed warmth I used to think was real. Her dress was elegant but tight at the shoulders. She kept adjusting it when she thought no one was looking. Eric, the new groom, stood beside her, visibly stiff, like he wasn't sure who he was supposed to be impressing. When the last guest arrived and the drinks were poured, Melissa stood up and tapped a spoon against her glass. She cleared her throat and raised her voice just enough to command the room. She started with the usual. Gratitude, compliments, light laughter. Then she shifted. She thanked Paige for being brave enough to walk away when it mattered, and said she was honored to witness her friend finally get the love she deserves. It was dressed up, sanitized, and vague, but it was an attack. Everyone in that room knew who she meant. She didn't say my name, but she didn't need to. They remembered. When she sat back down, the server brought out the first course. That's when a staff member quietly placed a black envelope on Paige's plate. Her hand hesitated before she opened it. Inside was a single card with 2 lines. You never asked if it was true. You just made sure everyone else believed it was. Taped to the back was a printed screenshot, an audio snippet transcribed word for word. Melissa's voice, I just told her to check. And sure enough, boom. Caught red-handed. Below it was a QR code. Click it, and you'd hear the recording yourself. Paige looked around the room as if she expected someone to laugh and say it was a prank. No one did. Her fingers trembled. Melissa leaned over to grab the paper, whispering quickly, too fast for anyone to catch, and Paige didn't move to stop her. But others were already watching. Then the projector came on. The room dimmed automatically, just like it had during our original walkthrough. The screen showed a slideshow, the fake Tinder profile. The chat messages. The bar photo next to the untouched group photo it had been cropped from. A calendar showing the venue cancellation and the date it was rebooked under Paige's name. The florist's Instagram post. The vendor's deleted "thank you" tag. The "second time's the charm" caption. The original group text. One by one, the puzzle assembled itself, each image followed by a brief silence. The final slide, black background, 3 white words. Receipts always surface. It looped once. No explanation. No narrator. Melissa stood suddenly, walked quickly toward the projector table and reached for the USB drive, but the coordinator, hired through the venue, not by Paige, stepped between them and shook her head. Melissa turned to Paige, lowered her voice, but it carried just enough. "You said this would work." Paige didn't reply. Her hands were still on her lap. Her fiancé leaned toward her, voice low, but this time he didn't whisper. "Paige," he said. "Is this true?" She said nothing. Someone near the back got up. Then another. 2 of her co-workers exchanged looks. One woman, her cousin, I think, took her phone out and snapped a photo of the screen before Paige noticed and asked her to stop. It didn't matter. That image would be online within the hour. I waited just a few seconds longer. Then I stepped out from the hallway, slow, visible, quiet. The moment she saw me, she didn't speak. Her face changed, not in horror, not in guilt. It just stopped moving entirely, like she couldn't compute how I was there, how I had stayed this close without saying a word for weeks. I walked to the edge of the dining room, pulled the name tag from my pocket, the original one from our shared guest list, still printed and laminated, and placed it carefully on the nearest table. No one said anything. No one needed to. The only sound in the room was the quiet loop of the final slide, still displaying over and over. I didn't toast. I didn't gloat. But as the projector flickered behind me, I finally exhaled. Then I turned and walked out the front door. No one followed. The next morning, the same slideshow was sent, anonymously, to the vendors, the original guest list, and the group thread Melissa had weaponized months earlier. The message was unsigned. The file spoke for itself. Melissa's Instagram disappeared within 24 hours. Paige went private. She didn't post anything for a month. When she finally returned, she shared a photo of a sunset with no caption and no comments enabled. The fiancé was gone. Carl called the following week. He asked if I felt better. I said, "Better's not the word. But it's enough." He laughed and didn't push. I never told him what else I found in the background reports. About Melissa. About Eric. About the texts Paige deleted the night before she rebooked the venue. I left those in the unnamed folder. Unopened. For now. Because some things deserve to stay quiet. Until someone tries to lie again.